Good afternoon, distinguished students and faculty of Peking University. It is a true privilege to be here with you today. I often say that life is not a straight line. It is a series of experiments, of trials, of errors, and sometimes unexpected breakthroughs. What separates those who merely pass through life from those who leave a legacy is not intelligence alone, nor even luck. It is the ability to observe, to learn, and to apply wisdom in a way that compounds over time. Think about this: the single most valuable asset you have today is not money, not connections, not even grades. It is your ability to think independently, to see clearly when others are clouded, to stay rational when the world is irrational. That is what education, true education, gives us. So I invite you to listen today, not just with your mind, but with your curiosity. Because if we do this right, the next hour will not just be a lecture. It will be a turning point in how you think about yourself, your future, and the legacy you will create. When I look at a place like Peking University, I am reminded of something very important. The true strength of an institution is not the size of its buildings or the amount of its funding or even the prestige of its name. The real strength is in the minds that gather here, the students, the professors, the community of thinkers. This is the kind of place where the compounding of ideas takes place. Just as capital, when invested wisely, grows over time, knowledge, when nurtured in an environment like this, compounds at an even greater rate. And the returns of that compounding are not measured in money alone. They are measured in the lives changed, the innovations created, and the legacies left behind. Universities are remarkable not because they give you answers, but because they teach you how to ask better questions. That is the difference between information and wisdom. Information can be memorized, it can be copied, it can even be replaced by machines. But wisdom, that ability to ask the right questions at the right time, is rare. It is wisdom that allows you to look at the same world as everyone else, but see something different, something others have missed. One of the greatest gifts of education is that it expands your mental models. Think of it this way: each subject you study, each lecture you attend, each book you read, it is like adding another tool to your mental toolkit. And when life throws you a problem, as it always does, you reach into that toolkit. The more diverse your tools, the more effective you are. If you only carry a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. But if you have a whole set of tools, logic, creativity, history, psychology, science, you can approach challenges with flexibility. That flexibility is what gives you an edge in the real world. Now, let me tell you something about the world outside the walls of this university. It is messy, it is noisy, it is full of contradictions. You will encounter people who are smarter than you, people who work harder than you, and people who have more advantages than you. But the one thing they cannot take away from you is your ability to think clearly and independently. That is what education is truly for. Not to conform, not to memorize, but to train the mind to stand firm when everyone else is rushing in the opposite direction. I remember once meeting a very successful investor who told me, the greatest risk in life is following the crowd. At first, I thought it was a cliche, but over the years, I realized he was right. Crowds are often wrong. Markets are often wrong. Even societies at certain times in history have been dramatically wrong. What saves us from that blindness is education, the kind of education that trains you not to accept things at face value, but to keep probing, keep questioning, keep thinking. There is also something deeply humbling about education. The more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know. It reminds you that knowledge is infinite and our time is finite. That humility is powerful. It keeps you curious, it keeps you open-minded, and it keeps you learning long after you leave the classroom. Because here's a truth: your real education doesn't end with graduation. If you do it right, it never ends. The best investors, the best scientists, the best leaders, they are all lifelong students. They never stop asking questions. Another thing about a university like this, it creates a network of relationships that will shape your life in ways you cannot yet imagine. The person sitting next to you in a lecture hall today might become your business partner, your co-founder, or even the one who helps you through your darkest moment. Education isn't just about the books, it's about the people. And being surrounded by people who are ambitious, curious, and passionate, well, that is one of the greatest accelerators of growth you will ever experience. But there's a trap here too. Sometimes students think that the degree is the goal. They think the piece of paper, the diploma, is the reward. Let me tell you, It's not. That paper is only the ticket to the game.
Mm.
What matters is not that you got in. What matters is what you do once you're on the field. Too many people stop learning after they graduate, as if education were just a box to check. But the real winners, the ones who truly create impact, are those who continue to learn long after the ceremonies are over. They understand that education is not a 4-year process. It is a lifelong advantage. I would also say this education is one of the few investments that can never be taken from you. If you buy a stock, it can go to zero. If you buy real estate, it can burn down. If you build a business, it can fail. But what you put into your mind, the way you train it to think, that is yours forever. It becomes the foundation upon which everything else in your life is built. That is why societies invest so heavily in education, because it is the single most powerful engine of progress we have. And so as you sit here in one of the most respected universities in the world, remember that you are in a place where ideas are your currency. Spend them wisely, trade them generously, let them compound, because one day the world outside will demand solutions that are not written in any textbook. It will look to you, to your mind, to your wisdom, to your courage. And when that moment comes, the education you are building here will be the difference between hesitation and action, between mediocrity and excellence, between passing through life and leaving a legacy. That is the true power of education. When we talk about education, we often think of it in terms of skills, knowledge, or careers. But I want to take you a little deeper, beyond the books, beyond the exams. There is a journey that every human being must undertake, the journey of the self. It is the most important journey of all. And strangely, it is one that no university can fully map out for you. Professors can guide you, mentors can inspire you, friends can walk alongside you. But ultimately, the path of discovering who you truly are is a solitary one. One of the greatest thinkers of the last century, Carl Jung, made a profound observation. He said that most people spend their lives trying to conform to the expectations of society, what their parents want, what their culture demands, what the crowd celebrates. But if you only live within that outer shell, you miss the deeper layers of your own being. Jung called this process individuation, the gradual uncovering of your true self beneath the noise of the world. And while it sounds philosophical, it has very practical consequences. Think about it. Many people choose careers not because they love them, but because they seem safe or respectable. Many people chase goals not because they resonate with their inner values, but because they were told it is what success looks like. They might even achieve those goals, but often they find an emptiness at the end.
Why?
Because they climbed a ladder that was leaning against the wrong wall. Discovering who you really are ensures that the ladder you climb is worth the effort. I can give you an example from investing because that's the world I know best. Many investors chase the hottest stock, the latest trend, the crowd favorite. And sometimes they even make money doing it. But the real masters are the ones who have the discipline to follow their own reasoning, their own analysis, even when it goes against the crowd. They have understood not only the markets, but also themselves, their temperament, their strengths, their blind spots. Without that self-awareness, no strategy, no formula will save you in the long run. The same is true in life. If you don't understand yourself, the world will push and pull you in 1,000 directions, and you will never quite find your footing. Now, this journey of the self is not always comfortable. In fact, it can be quite unsettling because to discover who you truly are, you have to strip away layers of illusion. You have to ask yourself difficult questions. What do I truly value? What kind of impact do I want to make? Am I living authentically or am I just performing for others? These are not questions that can be answered overnight. They take years of reflection, of experience, of trial and error. But the earlier you begin asking them, the stronger your foundation becomes. There's another element here, the unconscious mind. Jung believed that much of what drives us lies beneath the surface, outside of our daily awareness. And if you ignore it, it doesn't go away. It simply controls you from the shadows. But if you learn to recognize it, to integrate it, you become whole. Now, I'm not suggesting that every student here needs to become a psychologist. What I am suggesting is that you pay attention to the parts of yourself you don't usually listen to. Notice what excites you. Notice what drains you. Notice what fears keep resurfacing. These are signals, and if you listen carefully, they will guide you toward a more authentic path. I'll tell you something interesting. Some of the most successful people I've met were not the ones who chased external validation the hardest. They were the ones who had the courage to be themselves, even when it didn't make sense to others. They understood that real success is not imitation. It is alignment. Alignment between what you believe, what you do, and who you are becoming. And once you achieve that, external success often follows naturally because people can sense authenticity. They are drawn to it. But I also want to make something very clear. This journey is not linear. You will stumble, you will get it wrong many times. You will think you have discovered your purpose, only to realize later it was just another layer of illusion. That's perfectly fine. The goal is not to reach some final destination of self once and for all. The goal is to keep uncovering, keep learning, keep becoming. And as you do that, you not only grow stronger, but you also inspire others to do the same. This is why education is so important, not because it gives you all the answers, but because it gives you the tools to ask better questions about yourself. The books, the lectures, the debates, the conversations, they all act as mirrors reflecting back to you who you are and who you might become. If you approach them with curiosity, they will gradually peel away the layers until what is left is not just a student with a degree, but a person with a deeper sense of identity and direction. And here's something worth reflecting on. Your greatest competitive advantage in life will not come from trying to be like someone else. It will come from being more fully yourself, because there is only one of you with your particular mix of strengths, experiences, and perspectives. That uniqueness is your moat. It is what makes you irreplaceable. And the journey of the self is the process of discovering and strengthening that moat. So as you continue your studies, as you look ahead to careers and responsibilities, don't forget the inner work. Don't get so caught up in the outer world that you neglect the inner one. Because at the end of the day, the outer world will test you. And if your inner foundation is weak, you will crumble. But if your foundation is strong, if you truly know yourself, then no storm can shake you. That is why the journey of the self is not a luxury. It is a necessity. The world you are stepping into is not the same world your parents entered, and it will not be the same world 10 years from now. It is moving at a pace that is faster, more interconnected, and in many ways, more unpredictable than ever before. If there is one thing you can be absolutely certain of, it is that uncertainty itself is here to stay. And in such a world, the most valuable quality you can develop is resilience, the ability to adapt without losing your essence, to bend without breaking, and to stay grounded when everything around you is shifting. Resilience is not about avoiding difficulties. It is about how you respond when those difficulties inevitably show up. Every one of you will face setbacks. You will make mistakes. You will lose things you thought were secure. Some of you may even face failures so deep that in the moment they feel unbearable. But here's the paradox. It is precisely in those moments of struggle that you will grow the most. Nobody becomes strong from comfort. We become strong when life challenges us, when it forces us to dig deeper, when it pushes us to discover reserves of courage we did not even know we had. I often think about this in the context of business. Some of the greatest companies in history were born during recessions or crises. Why? Because difficult times force clarity. They strip away the unnecessary, they test your conviction, and they reward those who have the patience to endure when others give up. The same is true in life. When everything is easy, you don't really learn much. But when things get hard, that's when you sharpen your edge. That's when resilience becomes not just a trait, but a lifelong asset. But resilience on its own is not enough. It has to be coupled with motivation, with the drive to keep moving forward, even when the path is unclear. And motivation is a tricky thing. If it comes only from outside, recognition, rewards, approval, it will fade the moment those things disappear. True motivation, the kind that lasts, comes from within. It comes from having a vision for your life that is bigger than the obstacles in your way. When your why is strong enough, the how becomes manageable. Let me give you an example. There was a young man I once met who had grown up with almost nothing. No privilege, no family wealth, no special opportunities. On paper, his chances of success were low, but he had a burning motivation to create a different life for himself and his family. That motivation gave him the resilience to work through rejection after rejection, to study late into the night, to fail and start again, to persist long after others would have quit. Years later, he built a company that not only changed his own circumstances, but created opportunities for thousands of others. The difference was not that he was smarter than everyone else. The difference was that he had a vision that kept him moving when the world told him to stop. This is something you will need to cultivate deliberately because the world will test your patience. It will lure you with distractions. It will present you with easier paths that promise comfort but steal meaning. And in those moments, resilience and motivation work hand in hand. Resilience says, I can withstand the storm. Motivation says, I am walking towards something greater than the storm. Together, they carry you through. Now, I don't want you to think resilience means being unfeeling or robotic. Quite the opposite. True resilience comes from accepting your humanity fully. You will feel fear, you will feel doubt, you will feel despair at times. Resilience does not mean pretending those feelings don't exist. It means facing them honestly, allowing yourself to feel them, and then deciding to move forward anyway. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is action in the presence of fear. What gives resilience its real strength is perspective. If you zoom in too close on any single failure or hardship, it can feel overwhelming. But if you zoom out and see it in the larger context of your life, you realize that one setback is just a chapter, not the whole book. You realize that what feels like an ending today often turns out to be a beginning tomorrow. And when you see your journey as a long game, resilience becomes easier because you understand that temporary pain often leads to permanent growth. There's also an important role here for community. No one is resilient entirely on their own. Every strong person you see has somewhere in the background people who supported them, encouraged them, believed in them when they didn't believe in themselves. Don't underestimate the power of surrounding yourself with the right people. They can be the difference between giving up and finding the strength to continue. And one day, you will be that source of strength for someone else. So as you prepare to leave the safe structure of university and enter a world that is unpredictable, I want you to carry two things with you. First, the unshakable belief that no matter what happens, you have within you the ability to adapt, to recover, to rebuild. Second, the clarity of purpose that fuels your motivation, that keeps you moving even when progress feels slow or invisible. Because life will not reward you for avoiding difficulties. It will reward you for facing them with resilience, guided by a vision that keeps pulling you forward. That is how you not only survive in a changing world, but thrive in it. One of the most powerful forces in education and in life itself is dialogue. When people come together to exchange ideas openly, without fear, without rigid hierarchy, something extraordinary happens. A single perspective, no matter how sharp, is limited. But when perspectives collide, when they overlap, when they challenge one another, new truths emerge. That is why sessions like this, where I not only share, but also listen to your questions, are so valuable. Because wisdom is rarely a monologue. It is usually a conversation. If you look back at history, almost every major leap forward in human understanding came from dialogue. Socrates asked questions rather than simply giving answers. Scientists debated and challenged one another's theories. Business leaders shared ideas that others refined into breakthroughs. Even in investing, which can seem like a solitary pursuit, the best insights often come from listening carefully to others, sometimes to learn, sometimes to be proven wrong, sometimes simply to refine one's own thinking. The humility to engage in dialogue is not weakness, it is strength, because it acknowledges that no one has the monopoly on truth. And dialogue is not only about exchanging information. At its deepest level, it is about building connection. When you sit across from someone, when you truly listen to them, when you put aside your own urge to respond and simply try to understand, you are practicing something rare in today's world. Most people don't listen. They wait for their turn to speak. But real dialogue requires presence. It requires patience. It requires respect. And when those elements are present, the result is more than just understanding. It is growth for both sides. But dialogue alone is not enough. It has to be combined with action. That is where legacy comes in. Legacy is not something you build at the end of your life. It is something you are building right now through every decision, every interaction, every contribution you make. Too often, people think of legacy as a grand monument, a name carved in history books. But in truth, legacy is simpler and in many ways more profound. Legacy is the ripple effect of your actions on the lives of others. It is the knowledge you share, the opportunities you create, the example you set. Think for a moment about the teachers and mentors in your own life. Some of them may never be famous. Their names may never appear in headlines. Yet the lessons they gave you, the encouragement they offered, the belief they placed in you, those things live on. They shape the way you think, the way you act, the way you will impact others. That is legacy. And in the same way, every one of you will leave behind ripples. The question is not whether you will leave a legacy. The question is what kind of legacy it will be. And this is where collective growth enters the picture. No one builds a meaningful legacy alone. Just as ideas grow stronger in dialogue, legacies grow stronger in community. When you commit to not only your own success, but also to the success of those around you, something remarkable happens. You create an ecosystem where everyone rises together. The best organizations, the best societies, the best friendships are those where people actively invest in each other's growth. Because when one person succeeds in isolation, the benefit is limited. But when success is shared, when it lifts others along the way, the impact multiplies. Let me put it another way. Imagine you have a candle. If you use that candle to light another, your flame does not diminish. In fact, the room grows brighter. And if those candles keep lighting others, eventually the entire space is filled with light. That is what happens when you approach your journey, not only as an individual pursuit, but as a collective mission. Your knowledge, your resilience, your discoveries, they are not just for you. They are for the people whose paths you will cross, for the communities you will shape, for the generations that will follow. But this requires a shift in mindset. The world often teaches us to compete, to hoard, to protect what is ours. And of course, competition has its place. It drives excellence. It sharpens us. But if competition is the only lens through which you view life, you will miss something much bigger. The real breakthroughs often happen when people collaborate, when they share, when they build together. The legacies that endure are almost always collective legacies because they are bigger than any one individual. And so, as you think about your future, I encourage you to see dialogue not as an occasional exercise, but as a way of life. Ask questions, not just to get answers, but to build understanding. Share your ideas, not just to be heard, but to spark something in others. And when you think about legacy, don't measure it by fame or wealth or titles. Measure it by the lives you touch, by the knowledge you pass on, by the light you spread. Because in the end, it is not about what you keep. It is about what you give. That is how dialogue becomes wisdom, how legacy becomes impact, and how collective growth becomes the story of your life.